Hi everybody, this is Laís. I'm here today with Lucas and Gabriela, and we are going to present to you our seminar on the topic Pragmatics. So first, let's start with the question. What is Pragmatics? Well, Pragmatics, it acts as the basis for all language interactions, and it is used to understand the practice of communication. So we can conclude that without pragmatics, there would be very little or no understanding of intention and meaning in communication. Now, let's take, for example, this little cartoon that I brought to you, right? So we have a situation here in which the boy wants to eat a chocolate. In order to eat the chocolate, his mom says, "Oh, speak to your father," right? And then the boy goes to his father and asks, "How was work today?" His father answers, and then when he goes back, he's already eating the chocolate. And then his mom asks, "Did you speak to your father?" And he says, "I did." So sure that he was right. So this is all about context, right? When she says, "Talk to your father, speak to your father," she actually means that the boy is supposed to ask for permission to his father, right? Before eating the chocolate. But instead, he interpreted it literally. So he goes to his father and just talks to him about anything, not about the chocolate. And then he thinks he's okay, he thinks he's alright because there was a misinterpretation here. So this is pragmatics, right? There's a context, and we can't look at everything literally. Context is very important to communication. So let me use an example to show how life would be without pragmatics. So, for example, the sentence, "Can you listen to me?" Well, the literal meaning would be, are you physically able to do this action? Can you listen to me? Can you physically listen to me? And the literal response would be, yes, I can. However, the pragmatic meaning, the actual meaning would be, are you paying attention to what I'm saying? So instead of asking the other person to pay attention, so there's a conversation, two people are talking to each other and one of them is not paying attention. So the other one, instead of asking, "Pay attention to me," they go and ask, "Can you listen to me?" So they are demanding that the other person pays attention, but without saying it literally. Therefore, the pragmatic response would be to start paying attention to what the other person is saying. That's another example of why interpretation is so important in speech. Okay, so pragmatics is the study of how context affects meaning. I think that we got it. An example is how sentences are interpreted in certain situations, as I showed you before, or the interpretation of linguistic meaning applied in context. Linguistic context is discourse that precedes a sentence to be interpreted, and situational context is knowledge about the world. So, to make an interpretation, you have to consult your previous knowledge, your knowledge of the world. And this will be very important in order to you interpret a certain situation or a certain speech correctly, right? So, depending on your background, you might not be able to understand something or to understand the actual meaning. Or if you don't reflect on what is being said, you might not get it from the start what the actual meaning of that speech is. Therefore, we realize that pragmatics embraces all of the other fields of linguistics, since it is focused on the broader part of language, which is context, right? So now, speaking specifically, pragmatics encompasses things such as conversational implicatures, presuppositions, as well as speech acts, right? These are some specifications of pragmatics. And you are going to see some more details on the following slides.
Good evening, everyone. Lucas here. I will continue now, and I will start by presenting a little bit about conversational implicatures. Okay, I will switch now to the presentation. Just a second, and then we will continue. Here it is. Just let me put it in full screen. Okay. So first thing, we study conversational implicatures because they are important for us to extract meaning beyond the spoken words. Let's say it like this. So what are implicatures first? Implicatures are a kind of inference, okay? They are conclusions derived from utterances, and they depend on certain agreements. We could say that the whole language depends on agreements, but these ones are a little more specific, okay? To extract these implicatures from utterances, we usually follow Grice's maxims of conversation. So Grice proposed 4 maxims that, if followed, would allow us to extract these implicatures from conversation. And we're going to take a look at them right now, okay? So these are the maxims. Or we could understand them as advices, okay? They are, they convey quality. So speech is supposed to be truthful, okay? If we consider speech to be truthful, we can extract utterances from them. Sorry, utterances, not utterances, implicatures, okay? There is the maxim of quantity. There must be appropriate amounts of information given. Not too little, not too much, okay? The correct appropriate amount of information. There is the maxim of manner. Clearness is expected. If a conversation is clear, we can extract, the word is missing, implicatures from it. And there is the maxim of relevance. A conversation should be relevant, and people are expected to contribute with relevant information. Okay, we're going to take a look at each one of them individually. So for the maxim of quality, it states, it talks about the truthfulness of a conversation. Because as a norm, we expect communication to be truthful. So in a context that there is no indication of irony or joke or something that breaks this expectation, people can make inferences based on what's said. And these inferences are the implicatures. For example, in the expression said by person X, it will rain tomorrow, we can implicate that X believes it will rain tomorrow and that X has reasons to believe that, okay? If it's not a joke, if it's not irony, if like the sky is completely clear, okay? It's not an irony, it's not a joke. And person X says that, we can believe that that person believes it, okay? And that person doesn't have to have like knowledge, okay? We are just understanding that there is a reason for that person to give such statements, okay? The next one is the maximum of quantity. It is about the amount of information or speech we use in communication. And it can reveal implicatures too. For example, if I am asked, are you from Brazil? and I simply answer, no, I may sound brisk, right? And the implicature is that I don't want to extend the conversation, or maybe I don't like to talk about it, okay? So the person can extract more information besides what I said, okay? They may think that I don't like to talk about it. They may think that I'm in a rush and I don't have time, okay? It depends on the context, but it's extra information, okay? Or on the other hand, we can also extend a conversation to avoid being rude. For example, when I'm asked, is this spot for anyone to use? Instead of answering simply with no, I can say, it's for customers of the supermarket. And the implicature of be of denying, but in a softer way. So if that person is not a customer of the supermarket, they will understand that that spot is not for them, but I didn't have to say no. So it's a way for me to not sound rude, okay? And simply say no. The next one is the maxim of manner. It talks about expectations of how people usually communicate, okay? And it also reviews implicatures, all of them actually. And it's based on the brevity and orderly expressed by conversation. For example, let's take a look at sentences A and B. Sentence A is this one. Jake turned the TV on. And sentence B is Jake caused the TV to turn on. They may seem like the same, but there is a difference, right? We usually talk like in sentence A. If we, in a conversation, produce a sentence like B, people will think there is a reason for we to not use the usual way. So it will be clear that the TV was not turned on the regular way. Maybe Jake used an application on his smartphone, or he has those devices that he claps his hand. Anyways, this is the maxim of manner. If we talk in an unusual way, there must be unusual things behind, okay? And there is the maxim of relevance. How relevant expressions are to a conversation review implicatures. Because usually, I'm going to skip to this last sentence here. Communication is based on coherence and cooperativeness. So like communication is a two-way road, for example. So I must talk to the other person in ways that make sense. So we have an example here. If I ask, what's the date? And I am filling a check. The answer, October 2020, is much more relevant than early 21st century, despite both answers being technically correct. Now, if I ask, what was the epoch that you went to high school? Early 21st century may seem more appropriate, or the first decade of 21st century, because it expresses like a broader amount of time. So we can see that this relevance maxim is useful. And these are the maxims related to conversational implicatures. Okay, we're going to talk now a little bit about presuppositions. I'm going to share my screen again, just a second. And let me put it in full screen. Here it is. Okay, so we're using Griffith's book, and he defines presuppositions as being a shared background assumptions that are taken for granted when we communicate. So we use presuppositions all the time, and but we take them for granted. We don't break them apart. We don't discuss them. We expect that both parties involved in a conversation to know about them. Okay, and what's the importance of presuppositions? They matter for connected discourse. So when we want to have a conversation that flows, they are very important. So we don't have to keep stopping and explaining everything. We take those assumptions and we simply take them for granted, okay? They indicate to the reader or listener, the receiving end, what is deemed important for the writer or the speaker, the emitting end, okay? It tells us, it gives us a little information about what is important. Despite they being tricky to navigate, because sometimes this shared background is not common, okay? Maybe I assume that the listener knows something that they actually don't know. The hints given are of great importance. So it's very interesting that we understand them and then we know how to use them, okay? Let's take a look how presupposition works in a dynamic conversation. For example, when a person asks, "Would you like some more dessert?" That person presupposes that a previous round of dessert was served before because of the more word, right? More indicates that there was a lesser amount before, right? If the person being addressed had not taken part in the previous round of dessert, they could not simply answer yes, please, or no, thank you, since it would add to the ongoing presupposition that they had indeed had a serving before, which is not true. This is important, okay? Now, how presupposition works in gender pronoun. Usually, words in English are not gendered. And then we must use presupposition to distinct gender, if necessary, obviously. So for example, the word teacher in English, in Portuguese would be professor or professora. They have gender, explicit genders, but in English, it doesn't. So we have sentences like this. Where is the principal? I need to talk to him or to her. If I think that I should, I would have to pick one. We could actually navigate that by using the singular they or them, or by asking, if I am talking directly to the person, which pronouns they prefer to be called. But usually, gender pronouns in English are presuppositional, okay? Then we have the difference between presupposition and entailment. It comes to two main points. First, presuppositions are not affected by the negation of the asserted part of the sentence. So if I say, it matters that she lied to me, or the negative, it doesn't matter that she lied to me, there is a common presupposition in both sentences, she lied. And it's not affected by the negation then. And we could also say that presuppositions can be canceled. I can say, I can produce an utterance which has a presupposition, and then I can deny it in the next utterance. For example, the medicine did not cure him. If I stop here, I could presuppose that he was sick or ill, but I can deny it right in the next sentence. He was not even ill, so it was not even an issue. Okay, so this is how presuppositions differ from entailment, because entailments usually cannot be cancelled, and they are affected by the negation. Okay, so this is it.
I'm going to introduce the Speech Act. The Speech Act, according to the author, in this elaboration of work, the point that's going to be discussed in this section is the point of talking, typing, and writing by itself. So, according to the author, passing facts is indeed an important function of the language, but it's not the only one. So, there are straightforward, almost non-technical ways to describe people's linguistic interactions. So, when you're giving a warning, when someone is greeting the visitor, when a person uses an email to apply for an extension or to or to apply for a job, when you tell something, you confirm an appointment. These these basic units of linguistics interactions, they are called speech acts. So here we have some examples of speech acts. The author who founded the modern study of speech acts recalculated that this sort of list could be extended to several hundred of examples. On this one, we have a statement, order, question, prohibition, greetings, invitation, felicitation, and apology. So, speech acts can be done in writing, not only in speaking. Like in this example here, letter G, Happy New Year, can it would be equally appropriate printed in a card or spoken, and the uterus in on the right in the example are each based on the single sentence, and the sentence is the level of the language that speech acts are tied to, which means that an average ceremony speech or a political speech is not a speech act, but a sequence of speech acts. Well, syntax and words that indicate speech acts type. Uh, in the speech acts in A to C, we have statement, order, and question. We were put at the head of the list because they represent the default uses for three of the main patterns according to which language English sentence are constructed. So here in the statement, declarative sentence construction, as in example letter A, is likely to be the vehicle for a statement unless factors in the context suggest otherwise. Now we have orders, and orders are the speech acts carried by users based on imperative sentence, as in example B, when we have pay this bill immediately, and unless the context indicates the opposite. We also have question, interactive constructions, like the one in example C, when we have where are you from, have questioning as the central use, but context can lead to them being interpreted as other speech acts, reminders, or requests to the one that we are speaking to. Now, in directed speech, when a sentence type is used in a performance of speech act, different from their default kind, we have what we call indirect speech act. In the language, things like could you, what would be a question form, have become an idiomatic way of making polite requests, such as why not, also a question form, is an idiomatic way of making a suggestion. Um, so particular words can contribute to identifying the kind of speech act being performed. For example, the word promise may figure in the speech act the of promise, and sorry may figure in an apology. But here we have an example. I promise to make you regret this. And in this example, it's more a threat there rather than a promise, right? So in this case, it's not a promise at all. Uh, uh, in speech act, we also have expressives. For example, thanking or condoling, congratulating, apologizing are used to express a psychological state. Or so, if you address are speaking to you address a speech to someone who did something, you use probably you thank this person or you congratulate this person. uh, in a death situation, you in a death case, you it is a case of condolences. And in a wrong situation, you did something wrong, the speaker used the case of apologies. Also there is a directive, for example, ordering, demanding, requesting, and convey a proposition about the future act of addressing that the speaker desires. And point is to try to get the addressee to commit to making the proposition true. So almost to direct what you want with your speech. So the pragmatic study of speech acts feedback into semantics, because in amount of a thousand of words meanings, we also can have we can find out 100 of speech act situations, such as thanks, congratulations, tell, assert, ask, demand, answer, communicate, and so on.
Okay, so what we can conclude according to the text is that pragmatics starts with the use of an utterance, remembering that an utterance is the action of saying or expressing something aloud, applied to a certain context. And after that, it is about how we manage to convey more than is literally encoded by the semantics of sentences. Well, finally, it completes the interpretation of the speech, allowing communication to happen properly, which is, at its core, the basis of all human interaction. Thank you.